Greetings, welcome, greetings, divine, all blessed, peace and love, joy and prosperity. Greetings, welcome to each and every one of you. K. Amina, divine, all blessed. Uh, Thank you so much, Gems, for being present with us here. Thank you so much for showing up again today at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time here live on YouTube Live for another powerful episode of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes with Voodoo Chief, the DivinePrince, the king and leader of New Orleans Voodoo. You are now sitting live and always in archive at your leisure and convenience with the DivinePrince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Alagoon Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, universal, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Understanding is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and my personal ever-living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my inner standing, my teaching, my walk, and my works along this divine, all-blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the DivinePrince, make sense out of all that we are challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and inner standing, the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe, Asheo, Ashe. Today, this Tuesday, January 29th, 2019, I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you live and always an archive at your leisure and convenience. But I am live right now here on YouTube Live, representing the House of the DivinePrince, Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central, Black Hawk Voodoo, Team Black Hawk Voodoo. All is truly and indeed a blessing. I'm honored and humbled and appreciative when you choose to join me in the middle of your day at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for the Power Lunch here on YouTube Live. I appreciate your questions, comments, requests. I ask that we be respectful. I ask that we vibrate from the fourth chakra and higher when we're in this space. And indeed, if you have a question, please type it in all capital letters. It'll make it much easier for me to and be able to respond directly to you. And your comments, please don't type them in capital letters unless it's something that I would read out loud to the group and it's pertinent to everyone present. I was asked to spend some time today talking a little bit more about crystal. Crystal for me was a major tool and component, not only in my own healing, but also my own journey into consciousness. Crystal stood out to me as I looked at ancient Egypt. And I know many are attracted, drawn to ancient Egypt, drawn to Kemetic science, if you will. There's a code there deeply embedded in the imagery and statuary of ancient Egypt that we can access digitally by pictures and video and in books that resonates with a certain core note in many of us. And even as a young person in my teens and 20s, I found it profoundly interesting that they were burying people with millions, what we would consider in material terms, millions of dollars in gemstones, diamonds, rubies, quartz. And what is the reasoning? I needed to understand the purpose. I knew that they weren't doing it in a Western sense, for indeed they were burying billions of dollars in material wealth that often grave robbers would come after at a later time. But we have to look at what their intention, their motivation, their purpose, their spiritual purpose for doing so. And so I began at a young age of earnest journey into the study of minerals, crystals, precious gems, and the like. And not only their material presence in the world, but their technical presence in the world, their spiritual presence in the world. Along that journey, I came into the knowledge of the crystal skulls. Many of you are aware of the presence of crystal skulls and stories tying us to Lemuria and Atlantis and civilizations that predate our known present world. In that journey, in that study. And so I delved as deep as I could into the study of stones, minerals, gems, geology, math, geometry came into play. The relativity of life and light and math and science and how those things all sort of come together, if you will, when we begin to look at the study of crystal. So I'm going to address crystal today. I'm not going to neglect stones and minerals like malachite, turquoise, and the like, galita, any of those more denser stones. We may reference them, but I want to stick more today with quartz, your clear quartz variety, and then more importantly, more specialized quartz and how these stones work and operate at the healing level, at the spiritual level, at the mental level, at the level of light. And indeed, all things in creation are nothing more than vibrating light, vibrating molecules, atoms, and light. So the knowledge of the universe is contained within quartz. The knowledge of our bodies is contained within quartz. There's a math, there's a science, there's a process of accessing that. I discussed earlier with the coming godchild about the similarities between vitamins, minerals, and vitamins that we take physically. And some of you vegans don't stress us using vitamins because you understand that they are minerals, ground up minerals at the most basic in earth that contains this hard substance that we now understand in its crystalline form. So we take the vitamin, those of us who take vitamins, and of course we take vitamins in our food, in our vegetation, in our produce, and it goes where it needs to go. We don't tell it to go to the heart. We don't tell it to go to the bones. We don't tell it to go to the brain. It knows where in our system to apply itself. And so when we think of crystal and its use in voodoo and its use in magical arts, it is a same system, but it's being applied energetically from the outside in, as opposed to the inside out when we digest vitamins in a more literal sense. When choosing a piece, I'm going to use talisman, I'm going to use the word amulet. A talisman is a piece often that is most personal to you. It's going to be referenced, utilized more frequently than any of your other stones. It's often extremely personal to you. So it's going to address your health, your inner strength, your consciousness, your personal empowerment. And it's a stone that I strongly suggest that you keep on you much of the time. Anytime you purchase a new stone, no matter the size, you want to keep it on you or with you as much as possible, particularly in the first 30 to 90 days. I call that the melding or the binding period. Much like building a relationship, starting a new friendship, starting a new partnership, you get to know each other. And so quartz crystal, if you don't already understand, is used in quartz watches for its ability to maintain the law of rhythm in an even, balanced fashion. Even if I were to crush this, as in CDs, it's crushed quartz, and break this down, each particle of it is going to contain the magic, if you will, the vibration of the whole. So in choosing your first piece, I strongly suggest you get natural organic quartz. This is natural organic quartz, but this has also been polished. The surface, as you can see, is very smooth. It has been polished for clarity. Now, there are two things that I'm often asked. Does size matter? And does cost matter? Now, size is important when you understand the dynamics of quartz crystal, how it works. So, for instance, this earring is a natural, organic, unpolished, uncut piece of quartz. Forgive me for my hands being ashy. I'm gonna fix that. It is uncut. It is unpolished. It has been unchanged from its organic structure straight out of the ground. This stone would have been mined this way, or it would have been broken off of a cluster. This is your cluster quartz. So you've got more than one point, more than one termination. I'm going to use the word termination frequently in the video. Each quartz, generally speaking, is going to have 6 sides. That's a part of how they grow naturally and organically in the ground. And then the 7th side we count as the point at the top. But it's going to have 6 sides, molecules stack on top of molecules, just like Jacob's ladder, just like our DNA structure, to create crystalline form. So this is not cut. This is not polished. This is natural out of the ground. It may have been given an acid bath to remove some of the clay and the dirt and that hard red mineral that's often attached to quartz, which is hematite, by the way. Many of you are familiar with hematite. Hematite looks sort of metallic, grayish in appearance, but it's really a red iron ore. If you drug it across the sidewalk, the concrete, it would leave a red dust trail. So that's washed off, if you will, in an acid wash when quartz is mined. It's not polished, it's not cut, so that broken in is natural to it either being removed from a cluster or removed, broken away from a hard rock structure from which it would have developed from. So for your first choice in a stone, for your amulet, for your personal talisman, a talisman is a piece that you wear most of the time. It's going to be programmed for prosperity, for healing, for protection. Quartz is uniquely created, uniquely designed to address multiple issues, multiple things. There are forms of specialized quartz that can be used to address more than one person, place, or thing, more than one energy, more than one power, more than one subject matter. Many of you might say, well, I have many things going on in my life that need to be addressed. So specialized quartz like cluster quartz or multi-terminated quartz can help in addressing more than one thing. But you want your talisman to be natural, to be uncut. If you can see, I'm not sure if some of you can, but when the light reflects off the wall of this quartz, you see lines, you see gradations, you see structure. That's how you tell the difference between an unpolished stone versus one that glistens on the surface like this, which has been polished for clarity. And when these stones are polished for clarity, it's so that you can see the inside. So there's something that should be going on the inside. A common word we use are inclusions. So inclusion might be another mineral. Hematite is commonly found inside quartz. Tourmaline, we call that tourmalated quartz. Rutile, we call that rutilated quartz. These are all forms of what I refer to as specialized quartz, because you have the benefits of what quartz does, generally speaking. Then you have the added benefit of how many dimensions does it have? How many points does it have? What other minerals intersect with it? What other structures are developed in the stone? And with each of those, often you'll find expense, stones that will be more expensive, and you'll find more specialized abilities within that stone that you, as the individual or as the healer, can access and utilize for your benefit. Your talisman should be something that you can comfortably wear. For some of you, this is really big, and I get that. This, for instance, might be more of an average size piece that you would want to wear. You can buy it loose. You can choose an individual piece, then take it to a jeweler and have it set in silver or gold. But it should be a piece that you can comfortably wear, preferably not have to take off unless you really need to. Some of you absolutely cannot sleep with stone on of any size. So I suggest you then have a pouch, an old sock, something you can put it in, and then put it in your pillow or put it under your mattress, put it in the bed with you. I don't suggest exposing your crystals to heat or to hot water. It can crack or shatter your stone. So you always want to expose it to cool water, or at least room temperature water, in terms of cleaning it off, cleansing it, both literally and figuratively, outwardly, physically, but also spiritually. You can cleanse your stones with cool running water, natural running water, but you have to be careful in putting your stone in a lake or an ocean or stream that you don't have complete control over it. Yemaya will snatch it, Mami Wata will snatch it, the spirits will snatch it, and you'll never find that stone again. But a stone of this size to you might be comfortable to wear, might even be seen as inexpensive. Now, I think I paid $5 or $10 for this stone. The person, the shop who sold me this stone, did not know what it was. This stone really could be sold for $40 or $60 because it's specialized. And within it is what we call a phantom. I'm not going to attempt to make you see the inside. Some of you might see the phantom. It's almost like the rings inside of a tree. It shows up as the evolutionary layer or path of the development of the crystals. Some of you might be able to see that clearly. I'm going to show you an example that's more visible to you. That is because the phantom inside this part is frosted, almost like an ice cube, whereas the outer body of this stone is absolutely perfectly clear. And this stone is representing one phantom or one layer, whereas often, as with the smaller piece that I showed you first, those phantoms are going to be multi-layered. And so these stones are great for accessing past life, future life, intra-dimensional travel. And particularly when you wear it as your own personal talisman, it's going to help you to bring together your past and your future. Some of you have a problematic childhood, a problematic upbringing. Some of you have a problematic past life experience that might be spilling over into your present day existence. Phantoms help to address that. Phantoms help to bring that to surface. Phantoms are also good in ancestral work, connecting to your ancestors, which is existent in your ancestral memory in your DNA. So it is indeed existent in the DNA structure, the lattice structure within a quartz crystal that is manifesting a phantom visually in that manner. You use it to go into your meditations, and we're going to have to talk about meditation if you want to fully understand how to use a quartz. We're going to have to talk about energy projection, how we consciously choose to project energy. If you're really going to use quartz crystal and any crystalline structure, like amethyst, like rose quartz, like citron, at its most useful level, you have to understand to some degree how those dynamics work. For instance, we process energy in our body, much like how our nervous system visually shows up on the map. We receive energy through our left hand or our left side of our body. And if you understand how your nervous system is aligned, it comes through your body and it goes up through your heart, and then it travels to the opposite side of your brain. So when we say people are psychic, when we say people are spiritual, when we say people are able to be intuitive and draw things in, we often associate that with right brain activity, which travels inward through your left hand. We receive things through our left side. Our right side projects. So we say that is left brain activity because it's more conscious than receiving energy. So it's math, it's science, it's more structured. It should be more conscious, that which we project. So we can see that similarity in stones. How stones are formed. There are left-handed stones and then there are right-handed quartz. And then how we use the stone. For instance, this is a single terminated quartz. Any quartz that has one point and a single bottom is single terminated. That's the point. So we perceive the energy as culminating within the body of the stone and then being projected out through the end. And I'm not going to throw too much information at you all at once right now because I don't want you to be confused. I want you to follow me, because not only are there left-handed quartz, right-handed quartz, and in terms of how we use them and how we project them, but also in terms of how we hold them in our hand. So if you're receiving energy with your left hand, so you want to hold this quartz with the point going in the projective direction in your hand this way. And when you're looking to buy a crystal, you're shopping for a quartz, you always want to test the stone in your left hand. You want to feel that energy. You want to perceive that energy entering, and it gives the stone an opportunity to meld with you and you with it, at least briefly, if we're talking about shopping for stones. If you're talking about doing meditative work, when you're first learning your stone, when you're first going into meditations with your stone, you want to always first use your left hand. When you have a much more clearer understanding about how to operate with the stone, you then want to use it in a projective manner with your projective hand, which is your right hand. And so you're going to hold the stone with the point going out. So you can then project energy, send that energy back into creation. And eventually we're going to talk about those 6 windows, what they mean, how they shape, how they operate, certain size windows, certain shape windows. For instance, there's a diamond shape that we use as a window to look into something. There are more narrower, I guess, rectangular shapes which are like doorways or portals into certain dimensional spaces and time. So buying a crystal, using a crystal, shopping for crystal, it's really much more than many of us are educated to understand going in. There is indeed a science there that the Lemurians, that Muir, that Atlantis, that Egypt, that the Incas, that the Mayas understood about how to utilize these stones. And thank you so much for you all who are present with me here live watching, you all who are present in the chat. I am going to address your questions, so please do forgive me. Seven, the gentleman, I certainly do appreciate you. Please type your comments in lowercase or in regular type. Type the comments that you need me to say out loud or to respond to in capital letters so that I can see them. Sister Love, I appreciate you. Rakia Braxton, Mikhail Allen, Trista Richardson, I appreciate each and every one of you. Aquarian Energy. If I'm missing anybody, forgive me. I'm going to have to scroll back up to see all of the chats. I want to address each and every one of your questions, particularly as it relates to the subject matter as we discuss crystal. Rocky Braxton, how do you know what stone is and what stone is right? I believe you're asking me two questions, and I'm going to address that. Min Sam Cartier, I certainly do appreciate you. Thank you for being present. You absolutely can smudge your stones with sage, with frankincense and myrrh, with lemongrass, with other herbs, depending on what you're trying to do, what type of cleansing you're trying to do, and in some cases, what you're going to subsequently program your stone to do. So we're not only going to talk about carrying stones, wearing stones, almost like a good luck charm. We're absolutely going to understand how to use them as the powerful computers, the powerful tools, specialized tools, indeed, that they are. Cinnamon, for instance, has a very specific effect on quartz. Sage has a very specific effect on quartz. Exposing your stones to other stones is another form of cleansing and recharging your stones that we're going to talk about and address. When you understand how these grew, how these formed in the belly of the earth, they often grew in the environment of other stones. They often grew in the environment of moisture and heat and water and pressure. So we will address all of those things. Rocky Braxton, the first part of your question, I think you're asking, how do we know what a stone is? And that's going to take some practice, some training. When I finally did get into crystals from a magical perspective, from a voodoo perspective, from a mental perspective, the first law of magic is mentalism. I indeed was impressed by the shape, the size, the color, but the more I studied, the more books, earth science, not stones from a New Age perspective, but from a math, from a scientific perspective, I began to understand that they were just as unique and individual as people, that they had a personality and unique characteristics within them. So learning them from a geological perspective, what separates, you know, this natural unpolished quartz from this natural unpolished quartz. Well, this is a left-handed quartz. This is a left-handed quartz. This is a right-handed quartz or projective. And you learn that by the shape, the dimensions, the direction in which the terminations move. If you see, this one sort of has an up slant that focuses the point this way. This one is more centered. No matter what direction I turn it, its apex is more centered. So its energy at the top is more centered. So this is a left-handed stone, a receiving stone. This is a right-handed stone, a projective stone. We also begin to look at its tint and its clarity. this clarity versus this clarity can often speak to the age of the stone, the environment in which it grew up in, and also can affect ultimately what it does as an individual specialized stone. This stone is actually older, much older than the stone that I produced at the right. So some scientists say it's because magma or the environment in which it was in cooled quicker, perhaps, and gave it that level of clarity. You can also get that level of clarity in older stones. But most stones have to be tested at a scientific level to get that grade of information, unless you're really well adapted to this field. And it's not as difficult to become as adept to this as I am. It just requires a lot of time, a lot of book knowledge, a lot of lab work, which means actually holding stones, looking at them, scrying into them, which is the art of focusing your attention into a stone, not just waiting on imagery or some level of communication, but also to understand what's in the body of your crystal. Sometimes you'll look at it one week and won't see certain things, and another week you'll see changes or transformations into the stone. You will also, as you develop your third eye, begin to see real physical manifestations, things in the stone that you did not notice before. One of those phenomena is what we call record keepers. And a record keeper is shaped like a diamond, a perfect mathematical two-dimensional diamond. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this one on camera, but just if I can get it into focus. No, I may not be able to show you, not on this one. It may appear as like a little red spot on camera, but really on the surface, there's a two-dimensional triangle there. And the average book authors like Katrina Raphael, Joy, Love is in the Earth, those artists describe this as a record keeper. And the belief is that these stones, again, this is an older stone, had some contact with older, more ancient civilizations that then programmed or recorded a message or imprinted an imagery into the stone. And those then show up as record keepers, as these sort of perfect triangular, two-dimensional triangular markings on the windows in the termination of quartz. Not all stones have that. So that would be considered a specialized quartz. So a stone like this, same age, same quality, may not necessarily be exactly the same cost in a retail environment, especially at a new age shop, because this one has that record keeper on it. So it's small detail like that that we need to understand. And rock shops, don't a lot of people of color choose geology in a way that affects our access to these tools? We can take a trip, take a journey to Arkansas and mine our own rocks, but many of us don't do that. Either a lack of resources, a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness. So we're often going to the rock shops, the new age shops, the crystal shops, looking for these tools. And we can't assume that they have this level of information and knowledge about the stones the way I do and many of you sitting in this room right now do. This is also a projective or right-hand quartz, single terminated quartz. If I spin it around, all the sides are predominantly even. The distance from the point or the apex to where the sides begin to go down are pretty much even all the way around. What makes this a specialized quartz is this diamond-shaped window here that I described earlier in the discussion. I'm trying to get it in the light where you can see it. I'm trying to get the light to hit it just in the right place so you can view it. But it's almost a perfect, maybe right there. Is that good? Two-dimensional diamond shape, and that's called a window in your quartz. And with the window quartz, we utilize that to look in to a crystal. Scrying, SCRYING, is one of the most common terms used for looking into the body of a quartz. And so we're able to look into a person, place, or thing with window quartz. That diamond gives us that ability. So when you're using these tools inwardly, whether it's on your talisman or it's a hand tool, you got to understand the nature of the tool that you have, what its specific abilities and diameters are, and then how they apply to what you're trying to do, how you're trying to utilize it. Do the G walk. Thank you so much for being present. I can see your questions because I'm leaning into the screen, but if you do have other questions, please type them in capital letters so that I can see them. Can you clean quartz crystals with your thoughts? Not really. Of course, when you're doing a cleansing of a person, place, or thing, what you think, mentalism, the first law of magic, absolutely is going to be a part of that process. So if you're thinking cleansing thoughts, you're thinking energy moving from one place to another, then to that degree, yes, you can direct the movement of quartz. But most varieties of quartz are not self-cleaning. Clusters can be self-cleaning. Now, you might absolutely want to rinse them, keep the dust off of them, but in terms of energy, there's double terminators in this quartz. There are tabbies, there are single terminated, there are right crystals, there are left crystals just in this cluster. There are master points in this cluster. So a cluster can be self-cleansing. Depending on the size of your cluster, you can keep your bigger tools on them, particularly during the full moon cycles, and they will recharge and they will cleanse. But in terms of your thoughts are often going to get caught in the latticeware, for lack of better words. It's sort of a scientific term, inside the structure of your tools. And particularly if you're using your tools with other people, if your tools are in an environment where they can be exposed to other people, they should be cleansed. Cool water, natural water is the best. Sea salt is helpful, but you don't want to soak them in sea salt for very long periods of time, no more than 2 or 3 days at the most. Your next question is more power. Yes and no. When I started this discussion, I held up a crystal that I dropped on the floor. It may have rolled under my chair, but it was an earring that I had with here it is, with a piece of natural, organic, uncut, unpolished crystal. Do the G-Walk, okay? Is just as powerful as a bigger piece because of the dynamics of what this stone is. It's uncut, it's unpolished, it's almost perfectly clear, though it does have a phantom in it and an inclusion in it. But the average person wouldn't notice that, wouldn't pay attention to that. I would even bet some of you can see the phantom better in this shot. I would even bet that the jeweler who made this wasn't thinking about that. All she thought about, or all he thought about, was how big it is. Will it fit into an earring? Will it be too big or too small for an earring? And probably even cost. How much does this cost? That would have been considered. And this absolutely can be used and applied to do bigger work. It's right there at your between your fifth, sixth, at the beginnings of your seventh chakra. It's at your consciousness level. So what you choose to program this with, a thought form, for instance, will absolutely radiate. This is a generator. If it was not in this earring, it would be considered a generator. Any stone that has a either natural flat base or man-made polished base is called a generator. Both of these are also phantoms too, by the way. And so that earring is nothing more than a generator that has been set in silver, and now you're dangling it from your ears. Bigger stones absolutely can have and hold stronger power. They tend to be older. They tend to be more grounded, literally and figuratively. They will often include specialized quartz, like a phantom, like an in and out crystal, for instance, like intra-dimensional quartz tools, double terminated, twins. The larger a piece is, often the more it will embody. This is I held this up, I believe yesterday or the day before, double terminated tabular quartz. And we use this for traversing space in terms of communication. Okay, would a much smaller version of this be just as effective? Absolutely. The example that I used the other day was this laser wand, which some of you can see has a couple of crystals near the end there. Two of them stand out in the light. The one nearest the top is shaped just like this. And this is a laser wand. So its ability to focalize energy and shoot it at a very specific direction and or target heightens the size of those tiny crystals at the tip of this laser wand. This is a larger version of that. And so I use this in bigger projects, bigger distances, a lot of remote work. Many of you know that I operate remotely. Some of you have never even been to New Orleans, but you've had readings done with me, you've had work done with me. And many of you suggest that it's right on point. So just like your computer makes the world smaller, it gives you access to more information, it gives you access to a bigger reach. Sometimes a bigger computer absolutely can give you greater ability. A bigger computer has a bigger memory. A bigger computer has a greater ability to store. And your computer, do that G-Walk, if you weren't here, your computer is running on this if you don't already know it. It's running on quartz crystal. Your computer chip is a slice of quartz crystal. The technology in your computer is running on this. And so the ancient Egyptians, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the ancient world understood this and used these like computers, but at a spirit level, at a mental level. And that's what I do. That's what we do. That's the purpose and the point. So a small crystal is okay if you understand what you're buying. Some people might consider this a small crystal. I know this today is called by many names, but this is really a quartz crystal with apophyllite on the surface. Apophyllite is not quartz. These aren't baby quartz growing all over the body, you know, of a bigger piece of quartz. This is a big quartz with apophyllite on it. Apophyllite's mathematical structure, chemical structure, scientific structure is not the same as quartz. So this smaller piece of quartz, it's a cluster. It's got double terminators on it. It's got some twins on it, but they're encrusted in this apophyllite. So this small piece is extremely powerful. In some ways, just as powerful, if not more, than this piece of cluster. But this is specialized. Many of you use this to access angels, to access Orisha, to access communication from the spirit realm. This cluster is more of a multitasker. It could do more than one thing, more than one person plays a thing at once. Groups, organizations, complex subject matter. So size indeed matters when it comes to your quartz as a tool. If it comes to your quartz as attractive, how cute is it? Maybe not. And in fact, some of the less attractive pieces are more expensive because of the awareness of the specialized nature of the stone. So I appreciate your questions, Lady Al. I certainly do appreciate you. Yes, you can put them in a pot of dirt for 3 days total should be the extent of that, to clean negativity. You're again reaffirming that these tools come from the ground, come from the earth. You're connecting them then back to the source. So yes, in the ground is great. You're less likely to harm your stones putting them in the ground. You might have to wash them off, but that's a great way to repurpose your stones, ground them. And if you've programmed, I know we haven't really gotten into programming stones. I might wait and do that on another show. How to program your thoughts into the stone, how to actually use the stone. I want to move some of you away from just the wearing of a stone to actually using it. Why would I use it? How would I use it? Because I believe that'll help you better make sense of, does size matter when it comes to a crystal, how big or how small it is? When in reality, the deeper question is, what do you need it for? What are you trying to do? So you might be doing something that does not need a big piece of stone to do that. You might need to conceal it. You might need to make it into jewelry. It might need to fit in a particular prescribed space in order to do a particular thing. But some of you are doing bigger work, stronger work, longer distance work, healing work. Some of you are dealing with the ancestors that are going back into the past. And so it requires what we call master healers, master stones. These stones, like people, are growing. Understand, these stones are still growing. We can't see it with our naked eye, but they're still growing, they're still developing, and we are assisting them in the continuation of their process of evolution. So they've grown in the ground, they've crystallized in the ground. Now that we have them, they're now assisting us in our journey, but we're also assisting them in their journey in terms of moving spirit energy forward. And sometimes there's what's called Devic quartz, Devic quartz. And Devic quartz suggests that a deity, an entity, a spirit inhabits the stone. I'm noticing that it happens a great deal once we get deeper into the show. We're right at 48 minutes now. So forgive me if it's bugged. Please just keep me posted. If it's a problem with the audio or the visual, let me know. Just type that in capital so I can adjust it. This is a twin. It's a twin because it has two terminations, 2 points, 2 apexes. So this is a twin. There are different types of twins. I'll save that for another show. But this is a master twin. We're still talking about, does size matter? Does size contain more power? This is an older, it's unpolished. This is totally natural. If you can see how the light is hitting these doorways here, totally unpolished. It should have lines. It should have dents. It should have indentations. It should have protrusions. It feels soft to the touch, but it also you can feel those lines. You can feel that bumpiness. So you know this is a natural quartz. This is not science. This is not made in a lab. The system knows how to reproduce stones in the lab, okay? So some of what you're seeing on these shopping channels are real stones. They're authentically, scientifically authentic, but they're not out of the ground like these are. These unpolished stones are naturally out of the ground this way. They may have been broken away from a cluster or from the rock surface or riverbed or mountain from which they developed, but they are primarily untouched by man. So their vibrations are contained. The messages which may be embodied within the stones are contained. And then how we use them, which is going to be my next question, Braxton, how do you use them? Indeed, is contingent on the shape, the size, what's going on inside the crystal, what's going on outside the crystal. So you have to build a relationship. Often you won't know everything about your stone the first time you buy it. It might take time for you to sit for days, for hours in meditation, just looking in your stone. Sometimes you'll find a whole complete stone. This is also a twin. This is a double terminating twin, but it might be smaller and completely embedded within a stone of this size. So in terms of interpreting how to use, you're going to consider that it's a twin. You're going to consider that it's a master stone. You're going to consider its age. These are often referred to as celestial stones in crystal books. You're going to consider the other mineral that's present. This is a presence of another mineral, probably hematite forming. And so all of those things go into then how you use the stone, how you apply it. Hematite, for instance, I wish I had a piece close, but I don't want to get up and walk off camera to go on. Hematite is protective. It heightens your energy field, your electromagnetic field. So its presence in a stone is going to be protective. It's going to be healing. They are considered blood cleansers. Lady Owl, forgive me. If tape is lagging, just give it a moment. If it clears up, let me know. If it doesn't clear up, I need to know that too. Thank you for alerting me to that. I can't really control the buffering that's going on. According to my security, my internet should be running free. So sometimes this long into a show, we get issues from YouTube. But if it clears up, let me know. And if it doesn't, I need to know that also. What's the difference between the ones that I have and the ones you find in your yard? Ashna Makri. And please, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. That depends on what you're finding in your yard. Often, and that depends on where you live, you're not going to find whole and complete quartz. Now, many of you can find basic quartz, crystalline quartz in your yard, but it's going to be much denser. It's going to be a lot heavier. It's not going to be as opaque. Translucent, it's going to be more opaque. Light will not pass through them to the same degree as clarified quartz. It may be in chunks or pieces, which makes them denser and operate at the lower frequencies as opposed to crystalline quartz. And the clearer the stone is, the more crystalline it is. But example of crystalline quartz that's not always entirely clear is amethyst, is rose quartz. That is quartz. That is quartz crystal. But the presence of magnesium, the presence of titanium, the presence of aluminum, the presence of other minerals creates the hue of purple in amethyst, creates the hue of pink, you know, and varying degrees of pink, peach, white in your rose quartz. So the science behind the stones is critical to understanding exactly how to use them, how to apply them. There's always what I call the good luck charm effect. Some would even say the placebo effect, that you carry a stone because you like it, you're attracted to it, It's pretty. You believe it has a particular purpose, and so it creates a goodwill feeling. But there's a much deeper science. When you do get some of these books like Love is in the Earth, it's one of my favorite unabridged crystal books. Um, Crystal Revelation by Katrina Raphael is a series of crystal books that I prefer that really gets to the meat of what I'm talking about, specializing specialties within a quartz. So there's no different than what you find in the yard. The question is how clear is it? How crystallized is it? What mineral is it? Some of you got a driveway full of white rocks. It's probably howlite. Howlite has a vibration. It's not as defined as quartz, but howlite has a vibration. And howlite is also used a great deal in New Age shops for trickery. Howlite can be dyed almost any color. So it might be blue, it might be pink, it might be red, it might be green, but it's going to be howlite. And if you have an experienced eye, which doesn't take long, reference one particular stone, Google it, look it up on the internet, look at it in a couple of books, then go shopping for just that one stone. You'll find that it's not that hard to learn to identify these stones. But just like going to college, going to university, you have to be committed to doing the work. You have to be committed to wanting to learn this level of information and study it and make it make sense. I once worked in a rock shop. Some of you know. I can't tell you how many people came in there buying stones because they heard that it brought luck, prosperity, healing, but they really didn't know the difference. Or they're attracted to a particular color, but they didn't know. And some of the proprietors of these shops don't have any spiritual knowledge of these stones whatsoever. Don't even have a geological perspective on these stones whatsoever. They just want to sell you a stone. So the more work you can do in better understanding, better identifying what these stones are, and then how to apply them to you and to your magic, the better prepared you will be to master them and to utilize them. Please let me know. I hope I'm not still dragging. I hope things have cleared up in terms of the sound. Yes, I do recommend hematite for anemia. Absolutely. It's a blood purifier. It's also full of iron. It can bring greater degrees of iron into your system in a natural way. Also, cooking in cast iron. Cast iron is a mineral which has a specific vibration. Cooking, frying in cast iron can also increase your iron intake and can greatly help to reduce and bring balance to anemia, many forms of anemia. Give me your next question, your next comments that you want me to address or respond to out loud here in the chat. Please do type it, write it in all capital letters so that I can see it, so that I can address it. Here's an example of clear quartz. This is probably $5, $10 at a rock shop. The average person might even say, oh, that's not even that particularly attractive. But when you start talking about attractive, you stepped outside of spirit, science, metaphysics. You aren't looking at what I'm looking at. I'm going to always look at, when purchasing a stone, the angles. Are they present? Are they unbroken? Are they unchipped? Is it undamaged? Is the point undamaged? That's the first thing you want to look for. Then you're going to look for what's inside it. Now, some of you see that little black spot right there. It shows up almost like a dot. That's epidolite. Epidolite. Epidolite is a mineral similar to black tourmaline. And indeed, it appears black. But if you look at it much closer, which I can't get to in the resolution of this camera, but if you were to look at that black spot of epidolite much closer, it's actually green. So it'll look black, but it'll show up in quartz and it's like tourmaline, but it's a green mineral, akin to green tourmaline, and it is a purifier, a cleanser. So often your quartz will be what we call included. Inclusion is the presence of either another crystal, that's a double terminated crystal right there, and or other minerals that show up in your quartz. So this is included with what's called epidolite. Epidolite. So its ability to pull things out and to cleanse them. The energy, you talked about using your mind to cleanse a stone. It's kind of the reverse, passing your mind through the stone. The minerals within them trap that debris, trap that energy, and then it has to be cleaned. It has to be purified. Now, your black tourmaline doesn't require a lot of cleansing. It's actually considered to be self-cleansing. And the presence of that snow, that white, that's an inclusion, that's another mineral. Some of it is quartz, but a great deal of that white, that snow trapped in this black tourmaline is apophyllite. Apophyllite. Apophyllite is a very powerful cosmic stone. It's even considered to be a product of outer space. Like many of our minerals on our planet, it fell from the stars and then reconstituted and redeveloped in Earth crust and gave us this apophyllite. So it has a strong cosmic universal vibration to it. And so the natural ability for this black tourmaline to cleanse, to purify, to move things out, to move things away, to keep things moving. You want to keep somebody moving, keep a person, place, a thing moving. You want to strategically utilize and place black tourmaline. I'm still answering, how do you use them? You can use them inwardly, spiritually, even with your imagination. You envision that energy moving through the stone, moving through the person, moving through the thing. You could also use them literally. Some of you work in an office. Set up some black tourmaline. Make sure you got some amethyst somewhere near. Amethyst has the highest vibratory rate of all the crystalline stones. So again, does size matter? How much does it cost? You got to have an educated understanding to answer that. So this is going to be extremely expensive. This amethyst is extremely expensive. In fact, I'm going to set up a challenge now for many of you. If you can buy an amethyst or produce an amethyst this deep a purple, I'm going to give you a special gift. See the depth of purple. The deeper the purple, the more expensive the amethyst. The larger the size, the more expensive the amethyst. And it also has this druce on it. This snow is often referred to in the industry as druce, but quite possibly at the chemical level, it's apophyllite. It's apophyllite. So I would set this up in my office. Amethyst has the highest vibration. It will raise everything, all people, places, things to a higher level. Amethyst has also been considered a sobriety stone for centuries. For centuries. In European culture, indigenous cultures around the world, this has been documented as a sobriety stone. People have come to understand that it will help you to maintain sobriety. And I'm not just talking about drugs, alcohol, too much sex, too much of anything is what I'm talking about. Sometimes we're addictive in our other behaviors, in our relationships, in our connection to food, in our connection to money, in our connection to certain carnal, physical 3, 2, 1 lever chakras. Amethyst helps to elevate all things to a higher level. So this has been cut like a generator. Remember, a generator has a natural or a man-made, flattened, polished base, but this can also be set up. This is the natural generator. That's natural. This is removed from a riverbed, from the bottom of a riverbed. So that will make this a natural generator. But because of the Western retail eye, the Western consumer eye, they polish and cut this flat base so that you can set it up like bookends. Because many people are going to buy it because it's beautiful, it's attractive. They're not going to get it for the reasons that you and I are going to get it, because we're trying to do real spiritual work. So if you're having a problem in your house with your spouse, with your kids, you know, they're doing things you don't like, they're doing things behind your back, they're doing things you can't clarify, this will elevate that. This is also good for people who are dealing with mental health, depression, isolation, stress. Let me tell you a quick story. Some of you know that I came up in a turbulent, horrific childhood. So I've endured many abuses, many negative scenarios. So I was primed for depression in my 20s, early 20s. So once upon a time, I lived in New York City. I lived at 110th and 5th Avenue in Schaumburg Plaza. High up, I think I lived on the 14th floor, if I'm not mistaken. And my roommate, who loved to travel, Germany, Austria, you know, Europe, she came home, she left this in the house, and she went off again for a month. And during that time, I went through a Great Depression. And I had a series of dreams during the presence of this stone in the house. And it caused my consciousness to be elevated. It caused my cycle of repeating things to be broken and to allow a higher vibration of energy to enter. So this could bring peace to your house, even if your family doesn't know what it is or how to use it. Just as presence. People don't have to know. And in some cases, people don't need to know anything about your stones or what you're doing or how you're using them. In many cases, I strongly suggest that you don't use your stones on other people, that you don't allow other people to touch, handle, or manipulate your stones, and that you keep them ritually clean unto yourself. And so that the stone understands you, understands your energy pattern. It knows where your weaknesses are, just like a vitamin. It knows where you need build up. But once you start exposing your stones to other people, it then starts to also process their energy. How can you learn mineral correspondence to tarot? Mikhail Allen, that's a great question. It also opens up for me a can of worms, because I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but there are many tarot decks today that don't resonate with the traditional science of how tarot decks are created, designed, and their purpose. And one of those is crystal tarot. Now, I use crystal tarot. In fact, I have two really powerful crystal tarot decks that each card contains a different stone, a different mineral. Of course, how they're on a table will mirror a grid system. So you have to also understand gridding and how and why that works. And so, yes, there's a legitimate operation in that regard. Now, in terms of just using tarot in general, and let's say I want to then apply crystal to that work, well, then you're going to have to understand what's on the table, what's being read, what's being said, what's speaking through the tarot, and then apply the knowledge, the trained knowledge of mineralogy. I probably didn't say that right, but mineralogy to your tarot reading. If we're talking about cleansing, then you're going to pull from cleansing stones. If we're talking about protection, then you're going to pull from protective stones. If you're talking about creating something, recreating something, and then projecting that out into the world, then you're going to deal with projective stones. And you have to be very careful about implanting any thought form, any energy form into your reading, which goes directly into your client. Even utilizing laser wand, quartz, one has to be careful. You can tear through someone's aura, just like as if you were having laser surgery. Most laser surgeries are successful and safe, but if the practitioner is not qualified, the practitioner don't know what they're doing, laser eye surgery could blind you. If the practitioner is not qualified with that tool. Another point I need to make is back to polished. This is natural. This is unpolished. This is out of the ground. It's probably been broken from a cluster, but this is natural and unpolished. The frequency, the lines are maintained. If you were here and I do this across the surface, it emits a vibration, a tone. It hums, almost like a ohm, but at a high frequency pitch. Sometimes if you tap your stone with something like silver or another stone, you'll hear a note, you'll hear a tone. And it's different frequencies. You'll hear a B flat, you'll hear a C note, you'll hear a range of notes. Polishing eliminates that, shuts that down. So this does not, when I tap this polished stone, it's going to be dense. It's not going to be a high note pitch. It's going to be a dense sound to it. So now we know we're working in the higher octave. Some of you heard me put this laser wand down. I'm laying it on top of other stones. And you hear that high-pitched sound. You will not get that with a denser stone. So when man starts polishing these stones, they're tampering with the frequency. They're tampering with the note. Now, is this still useful? Absolutely. But it will not hold a frequency. It will not hold a tone to the same degree, the same length as a natural unpolished stone. And that laser wand will send that vibration in a straight line. And some of you mathematicians in the room understand straight lines are eternal. They have no beginning or ending. This is going to have to be cleansed. Reiki, particularly if an emotion comes up, I might apply a stone. And so these are smooth, which means that the energy that is radiated from them is more even, more consistent, but a lower tone than a more specialized quartz crystal. And this is going to have a continued hair growth. You're asking Seven the Gentleman what to do if stones that you put energy in are stolen from you. That's a good question. Sometimes stones are what's called empathic. So will leap and break, disappear on you, and you don't know where they are. In some cases, indeed, truly be stolen. And the other person needs something in the stone. They may not just of what they need, but they need something in the stone. One of the downsides of someone stealing a stone that you've already programmed is that they don't know you. They don't know your pain. In my past life, I was a telephone operator. I worked in call centers. And sometimes, you know, when I wanted to create problems, when I wanted to go home early, when I wasn't happy about what was happening, you know, in terms of shifts and money, work. And we're talking about the 80s, the early 90s. We're talking about older computers. Less complicated and complex computers as to what we have today. So today's computers aren't quite as sensitive to outside interference from my wands and my crystals. But indeed, all these stones being in front of the computer, all of you focusing in on them, myself focusing in on them, that energy could also be creating the freeze, the lag time that's happening, the buffering that's happening in the show. So I do apologize. I hope even in my explanation that you all got it. I'm not sure that I can fix it. Many of you seem to be experiencing it. hope you can hear me clearly. Some of you are returning. I appreciate that. I just don't know. I think the buffering today uniquely is because I have so many crystals that I brought together right up on the computer. And so that's affecting the computer. We're all focusing in on my stones right now, so that also could be why we are experiencing worse lag time today than before. So just out of due respect, I'm going to end the show for today. Thank you, Uncle Glenn, for being present. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we had a long freeze time. I'm not sure if any of you heard my explanations about that. I'm glad you can hear me now, Hood Witch. I just explained that I have 15, maybe 20 large crystals that we've brought and pushed up to the computer. And we're all focusing energy on these stones. And that also can interrupt the frequencies within a crystal. I've tested it. I said this during the lag time that in my previous life, I was a telephone operator back in the 80s going into the 90s. And sometimes when I wanted to create havoc at work, I would bring a large crystal to work and keep it on my desk. And it would throw down, it would often shut down the entire communication system in the building. So I know these newer computers are more sophisticated, but the idea that I brought so many crystals this close to the computer and we are all focusing in on that energy, it could also be disrupting the signals. We could even have haters in the room who are focusing their ill intention on these crystals, and that is causing the lag time. And so I do apologize. I do. And I'm grateful for each and every one of you who managed to stick with me, stay with me. I am going to end the show. I appreciate each and every one of you at 1 hour and 25 minutes for being present, for hanging in there, for putting up with the technical issues. And hopefully, prayerfully, we'll get a much clearer, uninterrupted signal on tomorrow. And we'll continue our discussion about the power within crystals, minerals, gemstones, and tools that we can all access and utilize to our benefit. Thank you so much, Christopher Williams. I certainly do appreciate it. I'm being told that it was extremely long and abnormal buffering that just took place, lag time. So I don't quite know what to do about it. I know that it will happen from time to time. I'm going to try and create a space tomorrow where that doesn't happen. Hopefully tomorrow where I won't have 15 to 20 large crystals sitting this close to the computer, we might not have as many problems. So I certainly do appreciate you. I am going to talk more in depth on tomorrow about how to utilize quartz, crystal, mineral, gemstones. The denser ones that light does not necessarily readily pass through, as well as these more clear ones that are being used in high technology in our computers and technology of today. We'll talk more about it. I also invite you to have your questions, comments ready for tomorrow and type them in all capital letters so that I can see them. I'll also invite you to send me your emails at DivinePrince@houseofthedivineprince.com. I also appreciate and beg your continued support of what I do here, not only here on live YouTube, but also as a practitioner here in New Orleans. I certainly couldn't do what I do and maintain what I do at the level of what I do without each and every one of your help and your assistance. And I allow Spirit to direct my path. I allow Spirit to direct your path. And I'm just grateful for your continued love, support, and your presence. I want to continue to teach, to share authentic New Orleans voodoo, but I also want to continue to teach and share powerful magical knowledge like quartz crystals, like smudging, like other forms of diverse healing that often intersect with voodoo, but intersect with all of our lives at this crossroads that is the internet. We are sitting at the table of the World Wide Web. We are sitting at the table of the information superhighway. So I want to provide something in this platform other than just foolishness and entertainment. If you indeed find this to be entertaining, I certainly appreciate this. If you certainly do find it to be edifying and beneficial, I certainly do appreciate and ask for your continued support. Some of you don't have money, some resources. Share the link, share the web page, share the website, invite people to participate, invite people to bring their questions, their comments, their criticisms here to this space. I don't fear questions. I don't fear criticism. I don't fear a safe space for everybody involved that we can do that. But more importantly, I want to share, I want to teach that which hopefully I demonstrate and shows up in my demonstrating. That is the ability to not only navigate this ancient tradition of voodoo, but also to utilize it in a way that's self-empowering. Some of you understand my story, some of you understand my walk, and there would be many who would have me not be present. And sometimes I believe just the power of my presence speaks to the power due to voodoo. I owe it all to voodoo. It's not me. It's not that I'm cute. It's not that I'm attractive. It's not that I'm rich. It's not that I'm well connected. It's the voodoo. Respect the voodoo. Respect ancestors. I am living magic. I do stand on the shoulders of mighty and great and interruptions. Less buffering. I invite you all to stay present, to stay in light, stay in love, stay empowered, and to continue to be present here with me for the revolutionary New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes at high noon here on YouTube Live. My website, 24 hours a day, www.houseofthedivineprince.com. And oh, before I forget, special event at Xavier University here in New Orleans. Special event, March 17th. I believe it's March 17th. Let me clarify that date before I put that out live on air. March 17th, Sunday, March 17th, 3 p.m. at Xavier University. There will be a showing, a lecture, a demonstration on voodoo, authentic New Orleans voodoo, myth and reality. There will be a panel discussion. There will be at least 5 or more panelists that will be speaking to the truths of the myths and the realities of New Orleans voodoo. And I will be a featured participant in that event. So look for more information. That will be Xavier University, Sunday, March 17th, 3 p.m. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe all. Ashe.